Ladies and gentlemen, today is a very exciting day. It is exactly 23 days until International Earth Day. It's also payday, so you can probably imagine why I'm a little bit more excited. 23 days, but you know what? It's never really too early to start talking about planet Earth. And what is it that you think about when you think of planet Earth? I tend to think of little critters running through fields, or maybe birds soaring through the sky, or environments. But at some point, we have to mention climate change. It's just one of those things synonymous with planet Earth. Now, some of you in the room may be quite up on what climate change is. Maybe you like to read into it. Maybe you watch the news, the classic climate change skeptic versus Bill Nye the Science Guy. Or, over here, Brian Cox. Either way, you probably have your own opinions on that. But you'll be very happy to know that I am not going to talk about climate change. Sort of. In fact, I'm going to talk about something a little bit more exciting. The evil twin of climate change. Ooh. Fantastic two words put together, in my opinion. Evil twins. For those of you in the room who have evil twins, you will also know that their social life is so much more exciting than yours, even if it's evil. Now, the evil twin of climate change has a name. The name is ocean acidification. The next Bond villain name guaranteed. And I want to, rather than talk to you about it, I actually want to show you what it is. And then talk to you about it, huh? Yeah. And in order to do this, I've actually created an invention to show you. Okay, I call this invention, the ocean acidification in a bottle 5000. I added the 5000 part on to make it sound a bit more exciting. Now, clearly you're all thinking, wow, this looks really complicated. Trust me, it isn't that complicated. But you do need to use your imagination a little bit. Inside this bottle, I have the ocean. Right here, the ocean. You've all seen the ocean, right? Fantastic. And it's green. It's green for a reason. I've added something called universal indicator. Now, that's not something that indicates universes. It is instead something that indicates acidity, if something is an acid or an alkaline. Now, green is universal indicator talk for, I'm pretty neutral, to be honest with you. There's no real big problem there. But there is a problem that comes a little bit later. Now, again, going back to this idea of climate change, you'll all know about fossil fuels. Fossil fuels are things that we generally burn in our cars to get from A to B. But the big problem is not actually the fossil fuels. It tends to be the greenhouse gases that are released as a product. And one big one in particular is carbon dioxide. Now, you might already know that we do breathe out carbon dioxide, and trees tend to breathe that carbon dioxide in to remove it from the atmosphere, but that's not actually the biggest carbon store. In fact, the ocean takes in more carbon dioxide than anything else on the planet. And there is a lot more carbon dioxide in the atmosphere. I have brought with me today some carbon dioxide gas, homemade. Not as easy as it looks. Through a straw. I think that's enough. Right, what I am going to do, inside this bottle, as I said, we have the ocean. The gap at the top is our atmosphere. It's the atmosphere that generally hangs above the ocean. And inside here, we have a lot of carbon dioxide. We're going to see what happens when we insert the two together. Uh-oh, uh-oh, uh-oh. There we go. So, carbon dioxide actually bubbles into water. It dissolves into the water, and that's how it's removed from our atmosphere. If you're thinking that sounds impossible, well then, what do you think carbonated drinks are? Just saying. As the carbon dioxide dissolves from the atmosphere into the water to be getting rid of, a chain reaction happens. We're changing the acidity. You will start to see, eventually, with a lot of time and patience, this go from green to a slightly lighter shade of green, and potentially yellow, which is an indication of acidity. Yes, ladies and gentlemen, I am basically holding a bottle of acid at this point. Obviously, it's not that strong an acid, Obviously, when we go swimming in the sea, we're not melting, because it doesn't really affect us directly like that. Instead, it affects us indirectly through the marine ecosystem. The tiniest, tiniest, tiniest little change in our ocean chemistry, the acidity being a major part of that, can affect everything in our oceans, from our corals to our animals to our fisheries. You all like fish and chips, right? Be concerned. This is happening right now, and that is why it's the evil twin. Because even though this is something happening right now, something we're seeing in our lifetimes, we don't often hear about it. Something that kind of goes under the radar a little bit. Yet it is a big problem, and therefore the evil twin. Ladies and gentlemen, I'd actually like to change the tone of the talk that I've been giving today so far. What you have seen is actually an act, a street act, something that I do quite a lot. It's not something that I actually want to talk to you about today, not climate change, but something a little bit different. I am a science communicator. That basically means my job is to go out and talk about science, but it's more than that. Because there's no point talking about science if you're not engaging with an audience. You could have something very, very interesting to say, but if you've not engaged with your audience, it doesn't matter. Audiences are something big to think about. It's a big criteria every time I plan a talk, because audiences change. I will obviously not talk to the people in this room the same way that I would talk to a school audience, or primary school kids, or secondary school kids. Maybe I will take out certain words which I only learned when I went through university, and up until that point had no idea those words even existed. That combination of letters was a thing. However, there is something that the audiences here today at TED and the audiences in schools have in common. You want to be here. You're a captivated audience. No one in this room accidentally stumbled in here looking for the toilet. You've all come here today out of your own will to see some amazing talks, to change your opinions and to gain insight, not just into science, but into arts, culture, and business. You've done that because you've wanted to. And if I'm being honest with you, ladies and gentlemen, that's actually the one thing which doesn't really make me nervous, because at the end of the day, you want to hear what I have to say, and there are no refunds. Had to add that part in. But how do you engage with an audience who maybe wouldn't come here? I had a friend, and when I told my friend that I was doing a TED Talk, he was, "Oh, that's great. Who's Ted?" Some people, believe it or not, have never heard of TED Talks. Some people might not even know that there's a festival going on this weekend in the city of Hull. These things don't always reach people's attentions, whether it's because they're not interested, whether it's because they've got more things to think about, whether it's financial or medical reasons. There are some people that just can't engage with what we have to say here today, which is a real shame. But luckily, that's where science-busking comes in. Yes, ladies and gentlemen, just as cool as it sounds. Science-busking takes the science from the laboratories, the textbooks, the scientists themselves, and it takes it into the wilderness of the city center. And we walk around and we talk to people and we show people. That demonstration you've seen there was based on a research project I actually undertook to explain ocean acidification, a different problem to climate change. But ladies and gentlemen, as you can probably tell, the main thing behind that is for you to walk away with a different opinion on climate change. But actually, that doesn't necessarily matter. Maybe I do have a really important message I want to tell you. Or maybe I just want to talk to you about how sound travels through a room using a Slinky. This Slinky, to be precise. Maybe later. It doesn't matter. Walking away after that demonstration of talking just how something that we don't really consider, we don't really have to think about how sound travels from me to you. Sound's not endangered. But what it does is it changes the opinion of science in general. When you think of a scientist, you might think of a crazy hairstyled, lab coat-wearing, explosion-making man who travels back in time to 1955 to change the course of history. Or maybe you think of a textbook and a beaker. Something boring, something that we don't really want to think about. Maybe that's what comes into your head when I say science. That's not the science that got me interested. That's not what I thought of when I was a child getting into this subject. And I very rarely even looked like that kind of scientist. On a few occasions, if I'd woken up a little bit late, maybe. But most of the time, I work with people who you might not think are scientists at first, but who are. And just spreading that message across of what science actually is, whether it's got an important underlining message or not, doesn't actually matter. Now, science busking is great. Once again, you're connecting with people. I have busked inside train stations, inside shopping malls, and on street corners, and at festivals where science has no place being. And I meet a lot of people. And some of those people are already captivated. Some of those people would go to a science festival, would go to a talk, would seek me out personally. But a lot of them don't. And it's really, for me, amazing when someone comes up to me and just says, hey, I've never thought of it like that. Where can I find out more about the stuff that goes on? That's brilliant. Because now I'm connecting with someone who normally I would never see in a TED Talk, or maybe never see in a school or at a science festival. It's brilliant. So, ladies and gentlemen, I want to leave you with this. Where I stand on the concept of ocean acidification versus climate change, what we should be talking about in the 23-day lead up to International Earth Day is obvious. I think you can all tell which side I am on. Where I stand in relation to when we should be talking about science and who we should be talking about science to as well, again, that is obvious. But that's not really important. I'm already got my opinions. I already have my ideas. It's no longer important for me. Where I stand is where this all starts. Where I plonk my feet on that street corner, that's when I start to engage with the people like you in this audience. And where you stand at the end of it, that's the important thing. Thank you ever so much, ladies and gentlemen.